As you listen to this presentation, think to yourself, have I ever noticed instances of internalized misogyny and not realized what it was? A society that is hegemonically masculine is inherently centered on a lack of female power, and it manifests when anything not masculine is silenced, devalued, and ignored, rendering women the abject other.
Women who suffer from internalized misogyny experience self-hate and alienation, do not believe or trust other women, create hostile work environments for other women, engage in passive aggression with other women, but most importantly, these women believe in gender bias in favor of men. When women say things like, I am not like the other girls, they are trying to prove their superiority to normal women who subscribe to traditionally feminine ideals. Because hegemonic masculinity has constructed feminism as inferior, internally misogynistic women attempt to prove to their male counterparts that they are different and special. Internally misogynistic women brag about how they successfully fulfill gender roles dictated by hegemonic masculinity. These women make it known that real women do these things. If you vocalize this as a mean of attracting men, you may be suffering from internalized misogyny. A pick-me is a person who begs for the approval of a certain group. While the term may sound gender neutral, it is primarily aimed at women who are attempting to attract men by vilifying other women. By dragging down other women, the pick-me is especially displaying characteristics of internalized misogyny. We have made impressive strides pertaining to some women's rights throughout history. We tend to believe that when advances are made in terms of women's rights, these advances apply to every woman. Candace Owens is a perfect example of the black friend trope because she perpetuates the narrative that she is like white conservatives. As a conservative, her viewpoints are not necessarily beneficial to all women. Under the guise of defending an ideal of true womanhood, powerful anti-suffragettes sought to keep the vote from the lower-class women. In the North, they were daughters and or wives of wealthy men and were likely to be involved in philanthropy that hewed to the traditional gender norms. In the South, women's resistance to the suffrage stemmed from the worries about disruption of the racial order. Anti-suffragettes appealed to ordinary women by arguing that the right to vote would threaten their femininity and domestic ideals. By framing suffrage as a threat and not a privilege, powerful women hoped to keep all women out of politics. This tactic seemed to work because of a gender gap that has persisted for decades after women's enfranchisement.
Anti-suffragettes exemplified internalized misogyny because they were comfortable with hegemonic masculinity and put down other women for their own gain. Anti-suffragettes perpetuated and put a positive spin on patriarchal definitions of real women to make other women feel the need to stop trying to secure the female vote.
Revolution was a change in the social definition of acceptable sexual activity. It garnered support for freedom from sexual oppression. However, hegemonic masculinity and its double standards caused men engaging in casual sex with multiple partners to not be viewed as bad, but a woman doing the exact same thing to be labeled a slut. Internalized misogyny reared its ugly head during the sexual revolution in the forms of backlash against increased sexual freedom for women. Katie Rolfe wrote a book in which she opined that acquaintance rape was not a real thing, but simply bad sex and regret. A 2010 survey showed that nearly three-quarters of women said rape victims should accept at least some blame for their own assaults.
As the sexual revolution began to taper off, some residual backlash remained in the form of how-to dialogues about being a proper woman. Books written during this era demonstrate the discourse of heteronormativity through their advice about how women should act, turning women who do not perform these behaviors into an abject other.
A businessman is aggressive. A businesswoman is pushy. He's good on detail, she's picky. He knows how to follow through. She doesn't know when to quit. He drinks martinis because of job pressures. She's a lush. He exercises authority diligently. She's power mad. He's climbed the ladder of success. She slept her way to the top. Marissa Mayer, CEO of Yahoo, from 2012 to 2017 once said, I never play the gender card. The moment you play into that, it's an issue. By denying the existence of problematic masculinity in our industry, despite having experiences like being catcalled by a male shareholder during a board meeting, Meyer is implicitly internally misogynistic.
Women who are full-time stay-at-home mothers sometimes criticize women who have chosen to pursue a career. Businesswomen are chastised for choosing to advance corporate ladders in lieu of raising a family. Other businesswomen are chastised for having a family while still maintaining a career. It's a lose-lose for these women. Many internally misogynistic women amass power by arguing that other women are not entitled to it. Tomi Lahren and Ann Coulter are both prominent conservative spokeswomen who have dismissed feminism as a comforting excuse that is about entitlement instead of female empowerment.
Kellyanne Conway and Sarah Huckabee Sanders, also prominent conservative figures, have denounced the 23 women who have accused President Trump of sexual assault. They demonstrate a pathological reverence for hegemonic masculinity and exemplify how internalized misogyny manifests itself in women of power. 53% of white women voted for Donald Trump in the 2016 presidential election. For these women, playing into and supporting the patriarchy makes them feel safe. These women's continued support of Trump, despite his sexist rhetoric, displays their subconscious acceptance of the patriarchy and their problematic internalization of misogynistic beliefs. A small faction of women emerged during Trump's campaign who began tweeting the hashtag #RepealThe19th. Stemming from the creation of these maps, women began saying things like, "I would give up my right to vote to make it possible." Their views emulate internalized misogyny because they are willing to silence all women in order to perpetuate their adherence to hegemonic masculinity.
Girls grow up with misogynistic messages, internalize them, and are taught to either act out stereotypes or speak out against women who do. Rather than colluding with this perpetuation of sexism, recognize that all women are unique, beautiful, and should be praised instead of dragged down. Be empowered and secure, uplift women, and end the cycle of internalized misogyny.